So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar on business processes. Following on from our Irish Business Voice survey and corresponding report, we're now hosting a series of 3 webinars supported by the local chambers of commerce. At the 3 webinars, our team of experts will address the insights uncovered by the report and the issues facing businesses today. The results showed that 76% of respondents were concerned to varying degrees about business process inefficiencies. So that's what we'll cover in today's webinar. Our speakers will provide some key insights on process optimization techniques and tools that you can use to complete reviews within your business. First of all, Mark Balberney, Associate Director in our Business Consulting Department, will cover business process inefficiencies. Then Ian Cahill, Director in our Digital Transformation Department, will cover digital transformation and automation. Then Anne Phillipson, Director in People and Change Consulting, will cover people challenges and opportunities. The Q&A box will be open throughout the presentation. These questions can only be seen by panelists, and we'll endeavour to answer them at the end of the presentation. Also, please note that this session is being recorded, so just be mindful of that when sharing any information. Okay, I'll pass over there to Mark.
Great, thanks, Valerie. So I suppose this is, as Valerie described, that's the layout for today. I think just to get into a little bit just about the actual survey to start with, just to contextualize things. So the survey was run last June. There was 264 responses. You can see the breakdown across the country. Obviously, you'd expect the majority being in Leinster. We got 58% there. The purpose of it is kind of capture, I suppose, what are the challenges that businesses are facing in Ireland at the moment, and can we kind of give a bit of a kind of response to that to kind of support people. So if we just move on to the next slide there. Okay, so in terms of the respondents, what were we looking at here in terms of the type of businesses? So of the 264 respondents, the majority, that's 61%, were family-owned businesses. So it really covers the full spectrum. So you can see on the right there the different sectors that the respondents are in. It's really right across the range of industries in the country. But we've got a focus in particular, I suppose, if we look at the bottom there, we see professional services is, kind of it's about kind of 17% or something there. Then we have financial services, and then retail consumer goods are kind of the main categories that we're looking at. On there. Okay, so in terms of kind of demographic as well around these businesses, the vast majority have less than 25 employees. So we're really looking at small, kind of primarily family-owned businesses here. Also, the majority have a turnover of less than €500,000 per year. And in terms of kind of where I suppose the stage in the life cycle we see in the business, we can see from the bottom right there, we're looking at businesses which are either expanding or are revenue growing from a year-to-year basis. That covers kind of over 40% of the respondents there as well. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. All right, so the areas of concern, which really brings us into focus in terms of what we're looking at today. One main area that was kind of noted is the area of business process inefficiencies. So we're going to be talking about that from a process-centric perspective in my segment. We're also going to be talking about kind of the transformation, digital transformation and automation side of things, which is a separate item here, but it's also related to process. And then in the final segment, then Anne's going to be talking about some of the people challenges as well that kind of relate and are kind of, current kind of challenges that are facing business at the moment. So that's just contextualized kind of, I suppose, where we're kind of coming from today. And if we go on to the next slide there. So I suppose just to, we just introduce myself first. So my name is Mark Balberney. I'm Associate Director in the Business Consulting team. My background, my main qualification is I'm an internationally accredited Six Sigma Black Belt. So that basically is a qualification, which it's a Lean Six Sigma. So it brings in the areas of Lean and Six Sigma. Lean being about removal of waste, about increasing efficiency in processes, and Six Sigma, which is about the effectiveness. So it's about kind of quality standards and standards of output. So there's a lot involved really in kind of getting to black belt level, as you kind of expect, within one of these areas. And it includes a kind of a good amount of statistics as well in terms of kind of doing the kind of process kind of quality aspects as well. But there's a lot of concepts in it which are quite straightforward as well and can really bring value to companies immediately to bring about improvement. So I'm going to step through a few of the ideas there in this segment. So I just want to start off with a quote from, this is a guru, I suppose it would be regarded in the quality space. His name is Professor Kaoru Ishikawa, is in 20th century. He's very well regarded in regard to process and quality. He wrote over 30 books and over 600 articles in that space. He lived through both of the world wars, and his work really kind of came to blossom around the 50s when the Americans kind of came over to Japan, and there was a lot of integration there between the way of working in Japan and the way the Americans were using statistics. So what's very important, I think, about this quote is how he centers people at the core, really, of how he looks at business and how he looks at quality. So, and I thought it was very pertinent to the world that we're living in today as well. So if every nation plays its part in promoting quality control, the world will find peace and its people will be able to live together harmoniously and happily. So he saw kind of what was regarded as the gemba in the Japanese terms, but the workplace as being a sociological structure, and that the people at the core of that and how they interact with each other and how they did their work together was really at the core of reflecting on broader society and had impacts on broader society. So we're going to hopefully bring all of these strands together in the session today. So just go on to the next slide there. So when we boil things down, I could talk a lot about kind of Lean Six Sigma and the different kind of aspects of the methodology, but I'm going to step back just a little bit from this. I'm going to bring in a few quotes as well from just another quality guru, an American this time, Edward J. Deming. So what he said was, if you can't describe what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. All right. He's well known for the PDCA cycle, which is plan, do, check, act. That's also called the Deming cycle. That's his kind of contribution to kind of quality and process. He also said if an organization doesn't need to change because survival is not mandatory. So that gives you a bit of a flavor of he didn't sit on the fence. So I suppose what I'm kind of getting at there with that point is that understanding your processes and being able to map them out is a really, really fundamental aspect to actually understanding how you can improve your business. You need to be able to describe that. Now, when we're doing it from a professional services side of things, we would use, Microsoft Visio, which would be specific software for that. But you can just do it literally with pen and paper or a whiteboard. It's great, just capture what are the different activities that we're doing in this, what are decision points and all that kind of stuff. You can also use PowerPoint. So, it doesn't need to be very high tech, but what's really important there is that everybody has a shared understanding of what's happening in the process. So if we break down to very basic steps, if we're looking at improvements in processes, our first step is to capture our as is. So that is sitting down with your team, whoever the operators are, literally going through step by step. What's the starting point? How does our process actually commence here? What's the trigger for this particular process? What are the different stages here? Where do we make decisions? We want to know things as they are and everybody agree on that. And then once we've done that, then we're able to analyze that in an objective way. We're able to move ourselves away from the day-to-day processing of it and actually look at it separately and go, okay, how can we actually improve this? Where are our challenges in this process? And that moves us on to our 2B. So at that point, then we're looking at, okay, well, what could be a better version of this process? What would that look like? And we might come up with a couple of different suggestions on that. And then we're going to test them as well and see which ones are the best ones, which are the most effective changes that we're making to the process. And that's how we're going to move that forward there. So I think what's really important here, there's a couple of different concepts I'm just going to touch off. So being data driven is very important, especially for the way things are escalating, in terms of data is just everything these days, So even if you're a smaller business, you're not exempt from having some sort of management around your data. And that is really where you're getting the objective information to understand what's happening with your processes. So I think being data driven is really important. And then when you're looking at your processes, when you're doing those reviews, you're thinking in terms of kind of value add activities. Okay, so you've kind of got three categories. You've got value add, business value add, and non-value add. So I'll just explain them very quickly. So a value add activity is something that's basically adding value in the process to get to what the customer is looking for. That's essentially it. And the customer is at the heart of when we're talking about quality and process efficiency. Business value add might be some sort of regulatory aspect that the business needs to do in order to fulfill that process. So it could be a compliance piece, maybe GDPR or something along those lines. And that has to be in the process. Now, it's not something that adds value necessarily for the customer, but it's something that the business has to do. So that's business value add. And then your NVA or your non-value add are steps there that you look at it and you're kind of like, do we need to do that? Do we have to print that into a hard copy and then sign it and then file it and whatever? could we do that maybe digitally, like, you know, or perhaps there's an automation solution for some of these things. And this is my colleague Ian's going to talk about automation shortly. So when we're looking at processes in a modern context now, there's a lot of tools there we can bring in from a technical perspective that are going to improve either the entire process end to end and completely automate it, or even put it into the cloud, or it's going to take aspects of that and just, you know, alleviate aspects there that are maybe, you know, wasted time, or we're looking at kind of quality issues from those bits and pieces. Okay, so just move on to the next slide, please. All right, so the interrelation between process, technology, and people is very important here. I'm just going to kind of read through these bottom three sections here, which I think are the most pertinent. So from a technology perspective, so automation within a process can maximize efficiencies and allow for better utilization of staff time. Process excellence techniques such as lean combined with a suite of automation technologies ensures an approach that focuses on the desired outcome and issue resolution, which is kind of what I was talking about there a moment ago. And then when we look at the people part of it, so a successful process review requires input from the people who undertake the process. They will be critical in documenting the true as-is process during the first phase, as commonly the perception of how a business process functions is very different to the reality. So that's very important there. It's like you've got both sides of it. You've got your data, which is giving your objective measures, and then you've got the people involvement. And you have to remember as well, like that your processes are fundamentally, you know, either going to you know, be successful or fail based on the people that are doing those processes. So having people on board, getting people around the table in the boardroom, whatever way you're doing it, having people in that conversation who are related stakeholders to that is a really fundamental aspect to, you know, improving a process in your organization. And then the last point there about processes. So change is change no matter how small, and many businesses fail to implement change initiatives successfully due to a lack of engagement with their people. People impacted by the change need to be communicated with throughout the change process. So that is the people directly involved, but it's also different stakeholders along the chain, and that could be suppliers, or it could be customers, or different outside entities that you want to work with as well. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so these are the 8 types of waste as defined under the lean methodology. So I'm not sure if we have time to go through every single aspect here, but, you know, I'll pick out maybe 1 or 2. So waiting is an obvious one. You know, if we're trying to produce something effectively, efficiently, we don't want to have kind of big gaps in that process if we're trying to kind of turn it around as quickly as possible. So that could be waiting in different ways. It might be people waiting for something upstream, or as the customer, there's a delay in some way. And, you know, it could be technology or it could be people based, but there's something maybe in the process there that needs to be reviewed. You know, defects is obviously very, you know, I'm sure that that's something that would come to people's minds straight away, where we're making errors. But what's really important there is, why are we making those errors? You know, and we can sometimes kind of lean on, okay, it's you know, Joe did this or whatever like that. But the reality is that often there's something wrong with the process that's leading to those defects happening. So we need to kind of analyze kind of, you know, what's happening in the process that's allowing these errors to happen. And we want to bring in this concept, again, another concept, but Pokioka, which is the idea of error proofing. Okay, so it's like, can we actually create a process where we reduce the opportunities for error as much as possible? Areas of overproduction, overprocessing, you know, similar related concepts there. But it's basically, you know, doing too much when we don't need to do that. Underutilization of our skills, and then different types of kind of movement, you know, or holding inventory, you know, or different areas that we might have a waste in the process. So these are kind of things to look out for, I suppose, as these might be issues in your process. Okay, so next slide, please. So we've done, you know, with Grant Thornton, we've done many different kind of business process reviews and lean pieces, stuff like that. So I've just put 2 simple case studies here, which are both actually in kind of agri-food, kind of smaller kind of businesses, SMEs in Ireland. And these are just kind of the outcomes, I suppose, of doing kind of lean reviews with those. So the first one, we had 4 pilot wastage reduction initiatives were implemented, which all contributed to the increase in yield experienced. And these included mushroom stem length, so that gives you a sense of what kind of company it might be, bucket wastage, mixed sizing, and giveaway. So these are obviously a bit kind of specific to the area, but these are the things that kind of came from analyze where was the waste within their processes and what could kind of come out of that. So the increased QA initiatives have resulted in increased yields across all pilot houses, with an average yield increase of 16% was experienced, which is obviously quite significant in a production environment and a growing environment. And the second one we have here, many of the issues observed were interconnected and mutually reinforcing across key categories of the business, such as organizational structure, process, people, data quality, IT systems, and key performance metrics. So that's a very interesting concept, I think, on its own there. Like, you know, so what they're saying is like, we need to think of things holistically. You know, when we're looking at processes, a process doesn't exist in isolation. The process exists in the context of the overall organization. So perhaps there's something happening in the overall organizational structure, maybe with, you know, a management flow or something like that. And then that's actually what's causing problems with the process. Perhaps the process itself is fine, but actually the context that it sits in is actually causing problems. And then obviously IT being a big part of it as well, and data quality. So we could have a process where the data quality coming into the process is actually, you know, again, the process is fine, but the data quality coming in is generating a lot of problems as well. Or, you know, there's something called MSA, which is measurement systems analysis. And this is basically that there's a problem how we're measuring things. So how we're trying to collect our data is actually what the problem is, okay? So in this case, then the project team developed also a 2B sales forecasting process as part of that one. Okay, so we'll just move on to the next slide. All right, so in terms of kind of how you might kind of kick off a project like this, where you can get resources from, there are quite a lot of different funding sources out there, different grants that you can get. Enterprise Ireland will be one of the main ones, and within that they have Lean Start, Lean Plus, and Lean Transform, and this would be kind of targeted at kind of SMEs, and really that's a good place to start. You can get a grant there for, you know, maybe a few days and get somebody to come out and kind of give you a bit of a review and a help and a bit of a steer and some recommendations in terms of how you might be able to improve your business in a kind of short space of time. Also, we've got IDA, we've got the LEO, and Udoris na Gaeltachta as well. So a variety of different places that you can kind of look for different financial support to do these kind of reviews. So I think that brings us on to, I'm going to hand over to my colleague now, Ian, who's going to, I suppose, kind of continue on from what we were talking about there in terms of how technology can really support in terms of improving your process in your organization. So thanks, Ian.
Thank you very much, Mark, and good morning, everybody. And it's a real pleasure to speak to you this morning. My name is Ian Cahill, and I'm a director in the digital transformation team. And I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things today, a couple of things that came out in the survey, and also something kind of, I hope, pretty practical for you to consider that might just help you on your digital transformation or your digital journey, let me say. And you'll see why I said that in a moment. So you can skip on there, please, Valerie. Yes, so digital transformation, and then we talk about automation. And the reason we split it up like this is that in the survey, 70% of you said you were concerned to varying degrees about digital transformation / automation. But when we delved into it, it actually is all about automation, very little about digital transformation, which is what I would have expected. And so what I'm going to do though this morning is just explain to you a little bit about this term digital transformation. It's kind of an abused term in my view, lots of different views on it depending on what somebody might be trying to sell you, to be honest. And you know, so I'm going to try and take some of the noise out of that this morning and hopefully leave you better informed on that. And then we'll go into something that I think is actually practically quite useful and certainly worth consideration depending on where you are in your journey. And as the guy says, there's time for questions and answers at the end. So I hope this provokes some thought for you. So firstly, I mentioned lots of different definitions. I've zoned in on this one. This is from an organization called Gartner. They're an independent global industry analyst, and you know, no particular skin in the game. So I sort of have a bit of faith in their definition of digital transformation. And it is this, it refers to the process of leveraging digital technologies and capabilities, and here's the important bit, to enable business model changes and transformations. So we're talking about change, right? So when people are talking to you about digital transformation, it's not about putting in a bit of software, putting in a bit of hardware, improving something. It's about changing everything, changing your business model. You don't do that lightly. Changing your business, changing how your business works, how you make money, how you recognize revenue, and transformation, changing the entire essence of your business. So when people are talking about digital transformation, this is what it really means, in my view. And this is backed up by another survey that was done. If you can just press the button there, please, Valerie. Right, recent survey done. in the small and medium enterprise sector, why are you doing digital initiatives? And of the top 10, 2 were to do with digital transformation. Only 2. The rest, well, I'm going to tell you what the rest are about, but only 2 out of the top 10. So what are people doing? What's this digital stuff that people are doing? Just move on there, please, Valerie, and we'll see. They're doing the thing on the right there. They're doing digital optimization, which I'll talk to you about in a second, right? That's where this is at for a huge amount of companies, certainly in the SME sector. Now, look, not to abandon digital transformation. Digital transformation is brilliant. Yeah, I do a lot of work in it. Our team does a lot of work in it. But here's where it comes to pass. You are required to digitally transform when your industry is disrupted. So a bit like what Mark is saying, if you've no need to change, well then, you're in a different place. Digital transformation is required when your industry, oftentimes is required when your industry is being disrupted. And a typical example is the bricks and mortar retail versus the online, right? There's an industry disruption. And as we'll see, moving to more digital technologies involves a transformation of your business. And what does it mean? So if you're transforming, you're putting in new digital technologies that's going to allow you to add new products. So as we said, transformation there, new products, new services, new business models. That's what this is about. So what does it mean in practice? Well, here's just a few examples. Let's take the simple example first, bricks and mortar versus retail versus online. So a digital transformation here is moving your business entirely online, right? You're closing down the main street shop front. You're working out of warehouses. You're working with e-commerce technologies. That's where you're putting your resources into. Now that's a digital transformation. Another one, IoT, Internet of Things. So you digitalize a product, right? So now you're making a new product. It's a smart product. Simple example, I'm completely made up, but if I sell lamps, maybe now I'm going to sell a smart lamp, and this smart lamp has a sensor in it. It's connected to the internet, and this lamp can now be switched on and off from a different room, from a different town, from a different county. Frighten the life out of your children, flick it on and off the light, and all of that while you're away from home. But that's a digital product. Now you've now made your product a digital product. That's digital transformation. I mentioned services. This can now allow you to create new services. Now maybe you can sell a service that monitors the usage of the lamp. Based on that example, maybe you can sell a service to counsel your children for the fright you're putting them through. But that's a service that's enabled by digital technology. It's a digital transformation. You're doing something different. Same final example, just an example, platforms. So you're no longer in the selling lamps to retail customers anymore. You're maybe into a platform business because you know all about lamps. And maybe you're connecting the manufacturers of different components of lamps together so that they can build a lamp better. Maybe you're connecting retail customers with wholesalers, but it's a different business. You're not in that business that you were anymore. You're in a platform business. You can use all these various platforms to help you do it. Azure, AWS, Salesforce, all of these. But all of that is digital transformation. Now, and it's great, right? But you need to know that that's what you want to do if you're getting involved in digital transformation. Digital optimization, on the other hand, right? That is adding new digital technologies. So new technologies again, but why are you doing it? Better efficiency, better collaboration, better quality, better customer experience. Now that's optimization. You're making things better. Things are getting better. You're not reinventing your entire thing, but you're using digital technologies to make things better. So what are some examples there? And Anne will probably talk about this in a little while. Collaboration, productivity, that generally improves, well, it improves collaboration, it improves productivity in that sense. It can improve quality. You can move your applications into the cloud. You can move your email into the cloud. You can move your Teams into the cloud. You can put your document collaboration into the cloud, be it SharePoint, Google Docs, whatever you like. That has the advantage of improving collaboration, should improve quality, can lead to better efficiencies. If you've got sort of an IT set of IT equipment and servers and data rooms and what have you on your premises, you can get them out of there. Generally can be expensive things to maintain. So, potential for efficiencies in there as well. Another typical optimization technology is data and analytics. So again, you're just using you're not transforming your business, but you're making it better. You're improving your forecasting. When do people buy lamps? Who can I target? What are good times and bad times? When are the peaks? When are the troughs? What can I do about it? That can help. Data and analytics is a digital technology that can certainly help you there. Predictive maintenance is another use case for data and analytics. So when is that piece of machinery going to need a service? Can I get ahead of it? Is it due a service in 6 months, but actually the data is telling me that it's going to fall over in 4 months? Well, maybe I can do some predictive maintenance on that. Again, you're making things better. And finally, and the one I'll probably the one I will zone in on mostly today is automation, because that came out loud and clear in the survey results. But also, in my experience, it's the area where a lot of small and medium enterprises can get best bang for their buck, and that's in automation. And it ticks a lot of the boxes. It reduces costs, it reduces error, and improves customer experience. And so we'll zone in a little bit on there and maybe take you through a practical example of a type of technology, and there are probably others out there. There are indeed type of technology that you consider when thinking about digital optimization. So if you can move on, please, Valerie. And the one we look at is called robotic process automation. Exotic sounding name, but I'll tell you more about it now. So the first thing is it's not robots. So it's not physical robots. There are no R2D2s coming into your premises, taking over your business or anything like that. It's software, and it's software that works with your existing system. So it's not a replacement system. It's not some huge investment like that. It works with your existing systems to automate rules-based tasks and processes. So if you've got an account system, if you've got a HR system, if you just use Excel and Outlook and Internet Explorer, Chrome, or whatever it is that you use, if you are doing rules-based tasks using those systems that are already on your desktop, but a person has to do it, and it's a really manual job, well, the bot, which is the terminology for it, the bot will do it for you. And as we'll see, does it quicker, way cheaper, and much better quality. So that's what robotic process automation is. So the second bullet point there puts it as well. It emulates the action of a human worker that they perform on their computer. So if you or some of your colleagues are opening up your account system, navigating down to the fourth menu down, tabbing across, searching for a customer name, a customer ID, taking some information from what you see, putting it in Excel, maybe sending an email based on that, saving it, closing it, back into the other system, updating with some information that you've got back. If that follows a set of rules, the bot will do it for you. And it does it exactly the same way as the person will do it. So you will see the mouse moving around the screen and clicking and tabbing and all of that kind of stuff. It can do it in other ways as well, but that's a good way to think about it. And you can see this happening. And it's really powerful technology. So it makes its decisions based on rules. Okay, it's not artificial intelligence. So, it's not going to deduce the answer to a problem based on probabilities or whatever. But if you give it the rules, it will do it. It integrates with other systems. It just sits on top of what you have. I'll talk about it briefly later, but to give you a sense of what I mean there, a lot of times systems don't talk to each other. And one approach to solving that problem is to build integration between those systems. And it's a really good thing to do, perfectly good thing to do. Sometimes it's expensive, oftentimes it's expensive, and oftentimes it takes quite some time. And if you don't have the budget or the time to deal with this, a bot could be part of the answer for you there, because the bot will, essentially you do integration so you don't have to type the same thing into 2-3 different systems. Well, and the bot does that. The bot will type what you wanted to type into 2 or 3 different systems without having a complicated integration layer. So for all of those reasons, RPA bots are thought of, and it's an industry accepted norm now. They're thought of as digital workers. They are workers that are on your payroll, for want of a better word, that are doing work for you, but they're digital. They're not human. Sounds very space age, I know, in some ways, but it's actually it's simple technologies in some ways. So a digital worker. So if we can move on, please, Valerie. So a digital worker. I've got you hiring a digital worker. Why on earth would you do that? Well, here are the stats. It does the work of 4 to 6 human workers, right? It has huge capacity. You know, the capacity of a bot, it might take something that takes somebody 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. It'll probably have it done in minutes, maybe in seconds, depending on the task. So it has got all this capacity. So, and it's saying it's like the best worker you ever had. Give me more work. I'm ready for more work. I've that job done. That job done. Give me more work. And so it does the work on average 4 to 6 human workers. It operates all the time. Doesn't get sick, doesn't get holidays, all that kind of stuff. Doesn't make mistakes. You give it the rules, it'll follow the rules. It is good value for money. Costs 80% less than a human worker. So it really is, that's, you know, probably a skilled human worker. That it's still very, very, very good value for money. Much less than the cost of one person, and it does the work of multiple people. And it avoids the other costs like integration, which I spoke about a moment ago. And in terms of scalability, you can take on more work. Sometimes you take on more work, it means, okay, my admin goes up, I've got to hire somebody else, I've got to go do more processing. This gives you the opportunity to take on more work without increasing headcount, right? Because as I mentioned above, the bot has capacity. Give me more work. So you can give it more work. And like any digital worker, you give it a performance review, and Anne would be an expert in these areas in terms of human workers. So I'll take the liberty of talking about how you should review your digital worker. After 1 year, and these are real stats, after 1 year, you would expect tasks to be being performed 80 to 90% faster. You would expect that. You would expect your error rates to be eliminated after a year. You would expect, if your business is compliance, if compliance is an important part, I think just looking at a lot of the people who responded to the survey, I think it probably is important for a lot of people. You should be looking for 100% compliance. You should be looking for a return on your investment. And again, this has been achieved by our clients of 100 to 300%. That's what you should be getting, right? Because you're able to do more productive work and generate revenue, boost revenue, and all of that kind of thing. So that's the kind of performance review you should be expecting. And I suppose, if you're not getting that, well, you can switch off the bot, to be honest with you, right? That's you can do that. It's probably a bit drastic, but you can. Different in the human scenario, of course, and rightly so. So that's why you would employ a digital worker. That's why it's a good idea. If we can just move on there, please, Valerie. So this is what our clients are telling us why they value it. And a couple of reasons, really, so increasing operational efficiency. So manual processes are improved, things are slicker, more streamlined, costs go down, efficiency. Things get done quicker. The example here is financial close, because we had, and the next slide we'll probably talk more to this, but notoriously manual type activities like that need to be done in a short space of time can be done. Strengthens your governance. So you can tighten your controls, you can build in the rules, and you can stay compliant. Good for governance. Fostering innovation is an interesting one as well. As I say, robotic process automation, RPA, it's not artificial intelligence, but it's the first step to it, if that's where you're heading, if that's where you want to go. Because if you want to get into artificial intelligence, if you want to get into machine learning, if you want to get into augmented reality, you need to have really good data, you need to have really good processes, to Mark's point earlier. And if you have those, then RPA gives you that, right? Because your data quality improves, your processes are better, and you can really improve there. That does give you the stepping stone to get into these other technologies. You don't have, it's an endpoint in itself, automation is, but if you want to get on further and innovate more, this helps. This gives you the basis to kick on. And I think that's really important. And empowering human capital, again, another one that you mightn't think of, but make the human workforce more productive, focus on value-added activities. How I would also characterize that is that this is interesting technology, and you'll certainly enthuse your staff if you got somebody on the team who is interested in logic, understands the concepts of if this condition is true, then I do this. If it's false, I do this. A sort of logical type brain. They gobble this stuff up. They can be trained to do it themselves, which is important, I think. And they can build bots. And that certainly happens quite a lot out there as well. They build a capability. They end up loving it. They end up being real advocates for it, because really makes the job interesting. And it's certainly another way of looking at it. It makes it less mundane, but actually it makes it very, very interesting in a positive sense. So before I move on, just in terms of summary, Mark talked to you about business processes. So business processes are, they should be good business processes, and Mark has outlined a number of ways you can do that. And when you've got good business processes, the next step then is to automate them, and it makes it even slicker. And I think it's a very good, and that's why these are the juxtaposition of these two sort of topics, I think, is very important. You can for sure automate a bad process, right? And sometimes people do that, and it's absolutely valid for them to do it, depending on their business circumstances at the time. However, it's better if you get your processes, if you get good processes first, and then you can automate them. But just to mention that. Mark also mentioned about waiting. Waiting is one of the real cardinal sins of the customer, is waiting. I'll give you an example about that in a minute, where waiting can be eliminated by RPA bots, errors we've spoken about as well. So that's why people in general value it. If we can move on a little bit, please, Valerie. Because there were a lot of accounting firms that responded to this. I thought it was important just to include some typical finance use cases. I'm not an accountant, but these are bots that we see out there, and we've helped people set up. So procure to pay, again, they're very, very common in accounts payable and also in accounts receivable, again, as well. Creating POs, validating invoices, reconciliations, anything like that, collections, payment processing. I mentioned about the finance ops, so general ledger closes, reconciliations, all are very, very common, because these are manual tasks that are comparing A with B. They're conditional. Well, if this is the case, then I do that. If it's not the case, then I don't do that. I do something else. So really, really suited to it. Even for FP&A, for budgeting, if there's a rule set to your budgeting and your forecasting, well then, you can automate some or all of that process. Take some of the manualness out of it. Variance, if I've managed to explain myself correctly, variance should make sense. You're comparing what it's supposed to be with what it was, and you're coming up with the variance analysis. So again, made for robotic process automation, and also around treasury ops and tax. Again, it's all around the reconciliation. Hedging, again, if that's part of your business, usually rules based hedging. So really, really useful in the finance area. Other typical ones outside of finance or direct sort of finance operations, recruiting and payroll. We see it in payroll administration and auditing. My advice usually is, I don't usually start with payroll. I think you probably start with something a little bit more low risk when you're getting into this. But auditing is an easy sell there, really, and you can compare things. Employee onboarding, offboarding, right? Usually an awful lot of manual stuff goes on in there, between getting people assigned rights and getting things assigned to them and put in proper groups and all of that. Usually really, really manual, involving your kind of HR stuff, IT stuff. whatever facilities, whatever it is happens to be in your business. Usually quite manual, oftentimes not integrated, oftentimes things fall through the cracks, things don't get done. Somebody can't really start properly because the onboarding hasn't been done. Similarly with offboarding, right? You know, and you want to revoke certain accesses, deny certain privileges. Again, can be manual. People can forget to do certain parts of it. The bot won't. In legal, again, compliance audits, contract management, I think is, you know, reminders on contracts, due dates coming up, and it can kick off workflows. Yeah, instead of thanks, Valerie. Kick off workflows and what have you, and be able to automate that part of the process. Retail, yeah, customer feedback, loyalty programs, notoriously manual, handling returns, customer feedback, and I think that I'll give you an example on the next page about that. Managing that properly, storing it properly, making sure that it's properly dealt with, that it doesn't go into a black hole. Again, where it's manual, sometimes falls through the cracks, but the RPA, the bot, can handle that. Financial services, anti-money laundering, know your customer, absolutely transaction monitoring. I mean, that's absolutely huge use cases out there. Loan processing, we're involved in one of those at the moment. Customer onboarding, compliance reporting. Again, typical and strong use cases for an RPA bot. And then others in IT operations, sourcing, procurement, inventory. I've done that there because it really is any manual process that's taking up time, that's expensive, that's error prone. The RPA bot is a potential answer for you. And then I think finally, just to give you a sense of some of the ones we've been involved in lately, I mentioned the anti-money laundering. So we do transaction monitoring there, helping clients look for specific suspicious transactions, I suppose, based on thresholds that they would have. Again, it's not artificial intelligence. It's not figuring out who the bad guys are or anything like that, but it's leveraging the power of the human to say, well, look, these are the things I'm looking for. But the job is so manual that maybe, you know, they can't cover as much as they want to cover, but the bot can do that for them. And it allows people then to focus on what they're smart at, what they're trained to do, and they can do it better. So huge amount happening in AML. Loan application processing can be done. We've done remittance, or we're doing it rather, remittance management and journal entry. That was another one. Sales order processing, materials usage, waste. So back to Mark's theme on waste. You know, we had a client who had a lot of had a very good manufacturing process, but they needed to know about what materials were being wasted at the end of each. Well, it used to be at the end of each week because it took that long to get the stats together. It became a daily usage report because they were able to automate it. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. One that I don't have up there, but I've alluded to a couple of times, is these are all back office stuff, right? For the most part, it's really good and helps for efficiency. I think also for I suppose customer facing type applications of this as well. I had another client who they had introduced a type of digital interaction with their customers, and the customers had a kind of a fairly consistent thing used to go wrong on this for them. And so due to resource constraints, what our client had to do is they had to wait until enough of these problems built up, so and then they tackle them maybe, you know, when somebody was free, and generally it was maybe once a week or once every 10 days when there was enough of them to do something about it. Otherwise it was very intermittent and there was no time to do it. So that was fine, but of course it completely frustrated the customers who had this new way of doing things, and then something would go wrong and then they had to wait for a good number of days before anybody got back to them. So we were able to automate that because it was just a manual thing that had to be done to fix the problem. And so we took away the manpower problem here by having the bot just automate the response to this thing, and hopefully the customer is happy about it. So I think that's probably it overall. I think it's important though to say that it's processes hugely important, and if you can make your processes efficient, I think that's the thing to do. It's automating these processes and using that technology to reduce your costs, increase your quality, improve collaboration, improve customer experience, and then also importantly, what does it mean for the people? Because everything we've said here and everything we've talked about, processes and robots and all of that kind of stuff, affects people and doesn't do away with the need for people. And so the people aspect of this is hugely important, I think, as Mark and I have both alluded to, and Anne no doubt will tell you more about. So thank you very much. I hope that was informative and useful. We'll see if there's any questions and happy to try and answer those again. But over to you, Anne.
Thanks, Ian. So until we get to the point of replacing all of our people with bots and digital workers, we need to consider the changing context. And you know, we've had such a dramatic 2 years in terms of the change of context for your people. So that is presenting lots of new challenges, but also lots of opportunities. So we'll take a look at that. So my name is Anne Phillipson, and I'm the director of our People and Change practice within Grant Thornton. So when we looked at the survey results, it was, I have to say I wasn't surprised, but there was a lot of themes that we are seeing globally as well. So what did you say in the business voice? You said that the access to skills is a particular concern, and that you are either very concerned or seriously concerned about access to the skilled workforce. And you probably only have to open today's paper to see stories about this, where there is a real scramble for skilled workers. So unemployment rates are continuing to fall. The demand for labor is also being impacted by people's changing relationship with work. And I think the pandemic has brought this to the fore. So many workers are now wishing to continue with remote or flexible working. And of course, that's creating a change and a demand for changes to processes and the way that we work within organizations. So as the economy continues to grow, and it's going to put more and more pressure on this access to skilled labor. Businesses are going to have to remain competitive, and we talk about the war for talent. So how are you continuing to attract but also retain your staff for the future? And businesses are, as a result of this, are changing their focus towards helping their staff, to their existing employees, to learn and develop and to get new skills. And both Ian and Mark alluded to this, that there is a change for that upskilling. So that's what the Business Voice survey said, but it is also echoed in the reports that we're seeing globally around this. So the picture globally is really one of unrest and uncertainty. And people are very adamant about not returning to the office 5 days a week if their job allows that. So for knowledge workers, the competition for talent is heating up. Although a CIPD study showed that less than half of organizations have a workforce people planning strategy in place to understand what do they need now and what will they need for the future. We talk about the Great Resignation. So we're seeing unprecedented numbers of people really taking stock and making some drastic changes. So there's lots of factors leading into that Great Resignation. We saw an exodus from expensive big cities. So there's lots of rural communities and smaller regional hubs that are quite excited that people are leaving those cities and working from remotely from those different locations. I think people also took a step back during the pandemic and said, you know, asking those big questions, what's it all about, and what am I doing with my life? And that has caused people to really reflect and maybe to make some changes. So in a response to that, we are seeing more and more companies that are advertising for positions, adding in this condition to say, listen, we're open to remote or fully, flexible or fully remote positions, and we're also open to location. So there is a war for talent, but this idea that we now have a more dispersed workforce also means that potentially we have a much wider range in terms of the talent pool. So until now, we were looking for the best candidate within, the 40-50 mile radius. And now that might be a much bigger pool that we can access through that. So unrest and uncertainty is the picture, and that means that leaders really are having to take a serious look at their talent requirements. So Valerie, if we just go to the next slide. This is some interesting statistics. So we worked with MBA students at Queen's University, and they conducted some global research. And at the time, which was a few months ago now, they said that they were over half of the employees that they spoke to said they felt that there was a worsening social connection to work, and that's a concern in itself. But also when you think about the fact that one of the reasons that people stay in organizations is their love for their team and their colleagues and the people that they work with. So if we're not feeling that strong bond or connection to the people that we work with, and we're feeling much more distant, then that also raises the increased risk that if someone else comes along and makes an offer, well, I don't feel those strong social connections. So 100% of the employees in this study said that human connection is the #1 challenge. So I just want you to think about that in terms of what are you doing in your organization to really strengthen the social connection and to make people feel connected, even if they're not co-located, even if you're not seeing them 5 days a week. How do what steps are you taking to help people feel connected to each other and to the organization? And of course, we've all seen the reports around Zoom fatigue. Here we are on Zoom, but that's something that has really become an issue through working remotely, and we're having to think about different ways of connecting. So the blurred lines between work and home was a real issue during the pandemic, and hopefully as we move now to more of a hybrid model, maybe that separation is welcome, where we do feel the need to reconnect with people in the office at least part of the time. So the research and the evidence is clear from whatever source. So let's take a look then at what this means. So what are all of these trends telling us? And more importantly, what can we do about them? So hybrid, I would say, is here to stay. Certainly the majority of the clients that we're working with are in the process of creating new hybrid, if not policies, then principles around how they want to work. And what I always say is we need to really move into a proper hybrid condition and not consider what we were doing for 2 years through a global pandemic was true remote working or flexible working. So hybrid, I would say, is here to stay for those people with jobs that can be done remotely. And that does require upskilling of both staff and leaders in order to respond to this changing context. So we can't just plunk people into this and expect them to be able to thrive. So there is an upskilling. One of the things that we work with a lot of organizations on is this idea of leading at a distance and leading dispersed teams. So there are great examples of companies that have been working this way for many years, typically technology companies. And so what is it that they do well? What can we learn from those organizations? The next area then is this having a plan for your talent. And I think you need to look at this both from an attraction, but also a retention perspective. So when we think about retaining employees, what is it that we're doing to strengthen those bonds, to make them feel valued, to make them feel that you're responding to their desires for more flexible working? So once we got a taste for flexibility, I think it's something that people are not willing to go back and to let go of anytime soon. So what are you doing in terms of your retention? A great idea that a colleague of mine came up with is, rather than doing exit interviews where we ask people, why are you leaving? We should be doing stay interviews. Why are you staying? What is it that you really love about your job? What's working well? And what should we pay even more attention to? And then, of course, you probably are looking to hire and attract the best talent. So what makes you different? What is your employee value proposition? Why should someone come and work for you? So really thinking about that, thinking about, what is it that is our purpose? Is it our purpose? Is it the way we work? Is it our ethos? there has to be something that makes you stand out when you're fighting for that talent out there. In terms of performance, I always say performance has to remain the goal. And as soon as performance starts to dip, we will see a return. We'll pull the plug on this experiment and say, yes, well, it just didn't work for us. But I think through the pandemic, we've proven that we can work remotely, and performance for most organizations has been maintained, if not increased. So do people have the tools that they need to do their job from anywhere? And I think this goes back to Ian and Mark's presentation. If you have the processes, if you have the technology in place, then people should be able to be as productive from their home office or another location as they are when they're in the office. But one of the things that we really will have to start paying attention to is performance management. So, gone is the day when the boss walked through the office and saw all the busy workers and making sure that everyone was doing their job. If that's how we rated performance, then that is out the window. So we're seeing much more of a move to outcome-based performance management. So it's less about the time, and it's more about the outputs that people are producing. Another huge issue is employee well-being, and there's an absolute increased focus across the board on this topic. But what I would say is that it is more difficult, I think, to monitor this when you're not seeing people on a 5 days a week basis. So when you sit closely with people, when you have that closer connection, I think there's it's not guaranteed, but there's much more likelihood that you're going to notice, gosh, you seem a bit off today. Is everything all right? When we're showing up for each other in 1-inch screens or 1-inch pictures on a screen, it's much more difficult to check in with people. So we're seeing a much greater increase in employee well-being programs, but those are really important and very good. But there's something about checking in with people, and this is something that we're encouraging all team leaders and line managers to do, to have more regular check-ins. And where that would have happened, naturally when we were all co-located, you have to be much more intentional about this when you're working at a distance. Then the issue of fairness is one of major concern. So how can we make sure that we're treating everyone in a fair and equitable manner and not having in-groups and out-groups? So is everyone having equal access to promotion and development opportunities regardless of where they're working? And finally, competition. So the increased demand for skilled employees, and depending on how specialized the skills are, that's even more of a competition. So we are seeing higher salaries and benefits package across the board. So this is really what we hear from employees. This is what employees want. They want to know that you care. They want to be part of a great team. They want you to focus them. Tell me what's really important. There's a lot of noise out there. They want to do work that matters, and they want the organization to help them succeed. So they're looking for development opportunities. They're looking for the tools to do their job, and they just want to work in an organization that they have a sense of belonging to and fairness. So those are the challenges. That is the ask, and it's really over to you in terms of the leadership in the organization to assess that and to find out what is important to your employees, and then to respond to that. So I think in terms of just a final point, I know I'm conscious of time. If you were to ask me, Anne, where should we focus our people strategies and our efforts? These would really be the 4 areas that I would advise you to really think about the training and development requirements. So the changing context. Do people have the skills to be successful in this new context? What is your employee value proposition? Is it compelling? Does it stand out? Looking at leaders then, and are they focused on the right things in terms of connection and communication, listening and engagement? And finally, do your policies need a refresh?